consortium as a body for university outreach professionals and allied, professionals to just come together for the following objectives very quickly. One, inclusion. We do not stand for exclusive practices where we say, okay, XYZ service providers are not welcome or XYZ kind of entities are not welcome. We are an inclusive organization. We want to improve access to universities for tier 2 and tier 3 foundation schools, community schools, charity schools. And we want to make sure that this intellectual capital that we are building here is also putting itself to good use for impact. The third is learning and development, because we want to make sure that outreach professionals, whether they recognize it or not, are also counselors. We are facing students every day. We're talking to them, but we are not nearly trained enough to have those conversations with students, which is a huge problem. And we need to come together and say, okay, we need to start training outreach professionals to have better conversations to guide students. The fourth is innovation through collaboration. So ensuring that we don't function in silos as universities. We don't function in silos as universities. We come together as professionals and say, okay, how can we do better work? With that, Dr. Raj Kumar, it is our absolute pleasure to welcome you to the first ever Legends of Outreach. It is envisioned as a limited edition series of conversations with legends who have changed the face of university outreach in the country. And you are the first name that came to our mind, and we had to have you. And thank you for accepting this. So, Ankur, over to you to introduce Dr. Raj Kumar in a much more detailed manner.
Good evening, sir. It's an honor to have you here with us. I mean, Bhakti told me beforehand that do not, after seeing Professor Raj, do not overflow with emotions because you have worked with him so closely and you are so passionate about him. So I'll try to keep it short and brief. Professor Dr. C. Raj Kumar is the founding Vice Chancellor of OP Jindal Global University. The university has grown.
Ankur, you went, you need to unmute yourself, I think.
Sorry.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
I think you can hear me now. Yeah. So, Professor Dr. C. Raj Kumar is the founding Vice Chancellor of OP Jindal Global University. The university has grown from a class size of 100 students to over 3,000 plus students that are recruited every year. The university was established in the year 2009, and the story, just as they say, is history. With 12 faculty members today, Jindal has more than 1,000 plus faculty members from across the world. The university has collaborations with some of the top universities around the world, even including Ivy League institutions in US. Professor Dr. Rajkumar is a Rhodes Scholar. He is an alumni of University of Delhi, University of Oxford, Harvard University, and Hong Kong University. Sir is an institution builder. He is somebody that we all look up to in the Indian higher ed space, not only in the Indian higher ed space, but the global higher education space. He is somebody that is very, very insightful, knowledgeable about the overall development of the higher education sector in India. His article yesterday that came out in the Indian Express has already gone viral, and a lot of you have spoken to me about it. I mean, how wonderful are his thoughts on the policy changes that has been happening in the Indian higher education space. It's an absolute honor, as Bhakti said, to have Sir with us. I mean, we could not have asked for a better legend to be opening our first Legend of Outreach series. So we are grateful, sir, to have you here with us. We also, I mean, on a personal level, I worked with OP Jindal. I have worked with Sir on a personal capacity. I have seen him work day in and day out for outreach. I mean, I really, when I thought of Professor Dr. Rajkumar and I was speaking to Bhakti, I said, he's one guy who has the energy that maybe you and me together do not have. I mean, doing five schools in a day. Morning, he starts at 7 a.m. till evening 10 o'clock. He is on the road. I have personally traveled with him internationally. In a 5 days, we have covered 4 countries non-stop. He has traveled. He has had the same energy of talking to students, talking to parents, talking to principals, talking to teachers. And even after 5 schools, it's never enough for sir. He will ask me, Ankur, what else we can do? I have 1 hour. We should go and talk to this school. We go and talk to that principal. So I mean, I've been amazed as somebody who is as accomplished as Professor Raj, for him to have a same zeal as we have. We only do outreach. He does 10 other things, but he still has more passion about outreach. So I am very happy to have him here to tell his own story. And through that story, let us learn what we in the outreach space can learn from this man. So I would like to start with you, sir. Professor Raj, if you can talk about the story of Jindal, that will be very interesting. We all know the story? Most of us will know the story of how did you conceive Jindal, but how did you go around recruiting the first batch of 100 students for Jindal? I mean, there is a story there. How did you actually did outreach? If you can share that story, sir.
Great. Thank you so much, Ankur, and thank you, Bhakti, and of course to all of you who are present here. Um, in fact, I mean, when you're calling this as Legends of Outreach, I am beginning to be worried that normally I believe that the title of legend should be given for people who are at least above 60 years old, and I am 48, became Vice Chancellor 34, and I have normally when you call a legend, that person is mostly retired and is actually looking at a much more calmer, quieter, simpler life. But I am afraid I am not in that situation. So either Ankur thought I might be already older and be above 60, and so hence you're calling it as Legends of Outreach. But be that as it may, I'm very happy to be part of this wonderful group because I should tell you that, in some ways, we all are part of a group which which is actually a group that never existed probably a few decades ago in the higher education space, and also are internally struggling to find an identity, a legitimacy, a credibility, and acceptability in the spaces in which we are working, because the larger imagination of Indian higher education is about, the public university system, whereby you create a university and you just don't do anything else, and students turn up, and students are fighting to actually come. No professor, vice chancellor, director of IIT, director of IIM from any public university, no principal of any college in the public sector uh, have the sort of faintest idea of what does it actually take to be part of an outreach team, to actually go and promote your institution and idea to people who are probably so kind of it's a very tough space to work with. So I have enormous respect for all of you who are here, because you are already a suspect when you begin your job. You are somebody who is a suspect because you're like this. When we were growing up, there was this the idea of a eureka phobe salesperson who's normally well dressed with a suit, and then brings this vacuum cleaner and makes you believe that this is the best vacuum cleaner in the world. I'll solve all your problems, and you will ever after live peacefully. And our own struggles pursuing the idea of outreach is not very different, and the only difference is that people are still much more accepting of a eureka phobe salesperson, because that person is expected to be selling a product, an item in the form of a television or a refrigerator or whatever. But then there is a different mindset of anybody promoting an education institution and an academic program, largely because of the evolution of Indian public institutions, where such a thing simply doesn't exist. There is no admissions and outreach office. There are no outreach professionals. There are no people who need to go to schools and colleges and coaching centers, let alone to actually promote the idea. So in some ways, our situation is much worse than that Eureka Forbes salesperson who has a better start than us. So I want to begin by paying rich tribute to each one of you for what you're doing in an extremely difficult environment, whereby you not only have to promote an idea that you believe in, but also you are met with a far more skeptical group of people who are reluctant to take your idea on its face value. And that actually makes the job, the work that each one of you do extremely difficult and significantly challenging. All right, that's my kind of introductory remarks. But to answer your question, Ankur, I mean, the journey has been truly inspiring, and I can only say that it started in a very, very modest manner, as you know a little bit about. I spent good part of my life in India, where I did my schooling and then my early college in Loyola College Madras and then Delhi University. And then after which I got the Rhodes Scholarship and went to Oxford, did my master's in law at Oxford and Harvard. And then I got this bug of wanting to build a university in India. I spent the next decade essentially working in New York and Tokyo and Hong Kong. And then way back in 2006, I got to meet with an Indian benefactor by name Naveen Jindal and met Mr. Jindal in late 2006 and spent a year persuaded him to do three things. One, to make a substantial financial commitment. Second, to do it in a not-for-profit manner. And third, to let me have the academic freedom and autonomy and independence to build a world-class university. And Mr. Jindal agreed to all of it in late 2007. And I moved to India in early 2008. And January to April 2008, I was trying to understand India myself as I was returning to India after a decade of living abroad, and quickly realized what an impossible country it is, where systems and processes are so complex to navigate. But the most difficult part of that journey was exactly what you do every day, which is to we were able to create an institution, but to get the word out in an environment where there are numerous claims that are and counterclaims made about what that institution is. So there are lots of stories I can tell you, but my most famous story is this, something which we have experienced in our life, and I don't know how many of you have experienced. So when you are so much at the formative phase of an institution, nobody cares, nobody wants to let you in to speak, nobody wants to invite you to do anything, because here you are promoting one more mediocre, or what is possibly a mediocre private university, and why should you be allowed to speak? So we would, and by the way, my Ankur, I typically do 8 talks in a day, and my highest was 11 talks. So 5 means I am working half a day. So in a typical day, when it starts around 6:30 or so, when we are outside Delhi, we travel across schools, and I end up landing at a school at 8 o'clock, and then we keep moving it an hour to an hour and a half gap. So I landed up in a school called I'll tell you the name of the school, doesn't matter. Woodstock School. Woodstock is in Missouri, and Woodstock will not let anybody in to speak. So this was 2009, and we wanted to speak to the students. So we could not even meet the principal or headmaster, and somebody said that there's no chance, they don't allow anybody to speak. And and I said, listen, I really want to talk to the students. And so then this teacher said, we can't let you into the school to give a talk. We can't organize all of that. But, at around 11 o'clock, the students will have a break, and they'll come to the car park for a coffee. So if you want, you can give a talk at the coffee spot. So I said, this is great. So I landed up at the parking spot. I remember me and Paddy and Yugang, 2 of my other colleagues, were there. And we, believe it or not, we gave an outreach talk for 15 minutes in the right outside the Woodstock School. And gave a talk, and then students some of them were listening, some of them were not. There was not much of a Q&A session. They left and they went back. And then while we were returning from, and it took like going to Woodstock is a big challenge, right? You're in Missouri, but still it's not easily accessible. So we spent almost 3.5 hours for that effort. And then we did many other schools, Willam Boys, Willam Girls, and many others. And then we returned back. And believe it or not, in 2012, this is 2009 I'm talking about, 2012, 3 years later, um, we had 4 students from Woodstock joining us. And I met them, like by that time we had already expanded. And they said that they heard my talk in the car park of Woodstock in 2009. I mean, that was something. So it's basically like, what, you can, you are relentlessly pursuing an idea and are prepared to take those type of risks and opportunities and not to be personally embarrassed about your own self or what you're doing, and definitely not have a personal ego, or your somehow your stature is diminished by the fact that you're doing something below your dignity or whatever. If you are able to overcome those type of things, opportunities will come. We were so deeply inspired by that experience, but we were anyways continuing the journey. That didn't. It's another matter that now we are in a comfort zone. Wherever, anywhere in India, we get invited, and not only me but any of my colleagues. So that's how we started. I mean, the modesty of that effort is incredible. That nobody will let you in to a school, and nobody is prepared to give you the chance and that opportunity, and that's how we began.
Oof, okay. I want to take like a second to just kind of digest everything you said, because I think I speak for everyone when I say that the first part of your introductory remarks, where you said, that you recognize and appreciate the efforts of outreach professionals and you understand the challenges that we go through. Um, it was therapeutic to hear it, because when someone empathizes with your challenges, I think half the battle is won there. I think you hit the nail on the head when you said that, I think we're unseen or unheard because we are a new phenomenon as a community of professionals. And there isn't much history or precedent to our existence, so people don't really know what to do with us. And I often joke with Ankur that we are the medical representatives of the education industry, and that's how many of us feel, because we're running from one school to another and saying, session de do. And of course, for many universities that has changed, but it's still largely true. I think so. Thank you for that. I think coming from you, someone as legendary as you, and as young and legendary as you, I think it really legitimizes our efforts. So thank you for that. And I think the
And, and,
second
and,
part
and
of
and my advice is look for those parking slots.
yeah, exactly. For someone, I mean, imagine you're the vice chancellor of the university, and you could have very well said, okay, you know what, this is beneath my dignity, and I'm not going to have a conversation here. But the fact that you hustled, you waited, and you spoke, I think for me, at least, it's quite it's a eureka moment, or it's a humbling moment as well. That it doesn't matter what your designation is or whatever. I think you need to keep at it and not believe that any situation that allows you to talk to students is beneath your dignity. But Dr. Rajkumar, you're leading from the front as the head of the institution, and you've done this. You've got your hands dirty, and you understand outreach in a way that I think very few senior management or vice chancellors do in Indian universities. And that's because you've done it yourself. And that's where the challenge comes for many other universities, because I'll be very honest, I have not seen many universities where vice chancellors are actually going from school to school. So they don't have that experience firsthand. Do you think, or how do you think we can, I mean, what needs to change? Because management expectations from outreach and the reality are very different, and they haven't experienced it themselves. They're in the boardroom, they're, all of that. It's all very strategic, but not hands on. What is your view on this?
Yeah. So, Bhakti, I think this is a very important question because, one of the major challenges of a typical Indian private university, which is promoting and pursuing the agenda of outreach, is that it's actually divided into a hierarchical structure whereby you have the management and the board level leadership who looks at university enrollment as some sort of a corporate number game. And then you have the academics. Can you hear me?
Yes,
Can you hear
absolutely.
me? Yeah. And then
Yeah,
you
we
have
can
the
hear you.
and then you have the academics and the professors and the deans and the vice chancellors who are also academics, who kind of feel it's below their dignity to promote, and to pursue such opportunities to engage with students, and it is something should be done by other quote unquote professionals. And then you have the outreach professional who, because of these two conundrums, are already put in a very weak situation that they can't, uh, in some ways, they are facing a huge inferiority complex, almost an identity crisis internally, because they are supposed to go and kind of get those students, but they don't have the sort of handholding support that ought to be coming out of both these two kind of agencies in that sense. So in some ways for us, I think it made a huge difference that I ended up. I mean, I was the founding vice chancellor, and so I was very clear that we are trying to promote a new idea in India. And if we are to promote a new idea in India, it's about galvanizing social and intellectual consciousness about that idea. And I can't be, if I can't promote that idea standing in front, leading from the front, then I don't think that my team members, the outreach professionals, it will be fair for them. So in some ways, by doing what we ended up doing, we were able to inspire the colleagues who became part of it. And since that year, even today, our deans, our faculty members, of course, our entire admissions and outreach team, all of them contribute to this effort. And as I said, and I've become slightly older, so I do 6 schools a day when I travel. But basically, it's still, we end up doing this. The other thing which I think is very important is that something which I tell my students as well is that there's a very famous anecdote whereby President John F. Kennedy it was said that he was visiting NASA in the 1960s, and he was going to go and inspire the scientists there. And so when he was visiting NASA, President Kennedy is very people-oriented person, very charismatic. So instead of walking into one particular hallway, he ended up walking into another hallway, which he shouldn't have been. The Secret Service was also walking with him, and he was walking in that direction. And then towards the end of that hallway, there was a janitor, somebody who was sweeping the floor, cleaning up the floor, like somebody who does cleaning work, facilities management team person. And President Kennedy, in his typical style, went up to him and said, "Hi, my name is John, and what do you do?" he said. And then this sweeper looked at him. He's, of course, talking to President Kennedy. And he looked up President Kennedy and said, "I'm helping these people put up a man on the moon." Um, so this janitor could have said so many things. He could have said, "I'm, sweeping the floor, or I'm working in C wing, or I'm doing first floor cleaning." But the janitor says that I am helping these scientists put a man on the moon. Now that means that there was a sense of collective consciousness about the larger purpose and goal that the institution was promoting, which as somebody like the janitor was also conscious of. So in many ways, one of the unfortunate things about many organizations, including universities, is that the vision and purpose for which the institution is advancing its goal does not percolate it to people below, especially the staff who are outreach. And so what ends up happening very quickly is that the outreach staff who are involved in that work very gradually get demotivated. And also, secondly, they begin to question their own competencies, their abilities, and also their own future. And thirdly, another thing begins to happen is that which is that they become very cynical about whatever ideas that they are pursuing. I mean, this is all about, kind of hoodwinking people into something that they don't even believe in the first place, and somehow get them connected to the institution. So, in a way, such a it's so important to build that vision and aspiration and inspiration that to drive the outreach effort. Everybody in the system needs to be conscious of the larger purpose, and that I believe is so critical when it comes to pursuing that idea.
Ankur, before you ask your question, I'm just going to say this. We're going to actually edit this response and circulate it to vice chancellors across the country. And hopefully they hear the message loud and clear. Ankur, over to you.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's Professor Raj for you. I mean, he said it when he said, if he can't do it himself, why would he ask his team members to do it? So that's the idea and the philosophy that he lives by. But Professor Raj, I mean, one of the things that we also would be very interested as a group to understand. I mean, as we see a lot of new universities coming up, a lot of our colleagues here are working for some new institutions, building outreach teams. I mean, what will be your advice for, what are the core ingredients that one should have while planning a successful outreach strategy, especially in the Indian context? I mean, what is it that they should keep in mind?
Yeah. So that's a great question, Ankur. So I think I mean, there is no doubt about the fact that there are number of new universities emerging, and even the prior private universities are trying to re-energize themselves, reimagine themselves, and are conscious of the changes that are happening in the sector itself. Uh, if you are an outreach professional, I think the most important thing that one should spend a lot of time is to understand and deeply engage with the idea, the vision, the mission of the institution. Something that we unfortunately spend so little time. I mean, most of the time, the effort of an outreach team is to be able to focus only on numbers, and I'm conscious of the fact that as private universities, you need to balance budgets, and it's important for you to achieve those numbers. But I think as an intelligent outreach professional, you have a larger responsibility towards the community that you are serving, and that community honestly is not just limited to that one student whom you are talking to, but it will include parents and teachers and counselors and the wider education community, who are ultimately, in many ways, are going to make informed choices on the basis of possibly discussions that you might have with them. So it's important for you to spend a lot of time with even the senior members of the management team. And I will say, and Bhakti wanted me to go on the record on this, I would say that every vice chancellor need to spend time with the outreach team. I mean, this is something, unless you are a vice chancellor of a Delhi university where there is nothing like outreach. But if you are, even if you're a private university, of course, but if you're an emerging public university too, if you really want to be able to connect with the student community at large, you want to have your, what I call the field professionals, the people who are at the forefront of promoting the vision and the mission of the university. They need to know you and your voice and your vision and your own reflections about the future. The second thing is important is that the team to whom you are reporting to, including your line managers, they need to be also be supportive of it, because sometimes what ends up happening is that, and this is something which, as a young professional, I can tell you for all of you, is that people don't realize that this is, as much it is a cutthroat competitive industry, so to say. I personally think the way to see it to be is that you are part of a wider community. You are you ought to see these ideas as a part of a wider institutional process, whereby you are guiding and mentoring and continuously engage with the lives of young people. And in that process, the most important factor will be your personal honesty and your personal integrity, both of which I believe will only shape your ability to make an impact on the outreach efforts. Because, and that's where I make a very important distinction between the salesperson of a product or a service as opposed to an outreach professional who is actually working towards fulfilling the dreams and aspirations of young people. And I think another important development that I must flag is that I've given over 12,000 talks across the country in the last 13 years. I've been traveling, even now. And one thing I notice is that there is a fairly significant degree of cluelessness among the school-based counselors, and almost bordering on misguiding and misleading students to make choices that are not in the best interest. And literally these counselors play god and end up experimenting with the lives of young people, because as you know, school counselors can play a very significant role in students deciding and determining what they want to do in their life. So in that process, largely, you as outreach professionals, when you come into the picture, you have a responsibility to help these young minds make the right decisions. And that responsibility will be based upon the foundation of honesty, integrity, and rectitude, because you are not only kind of sharing an idea in terms of the kind of program or university or school that he or she wants to study, but you also have an opportunity to shape the future of a young person. That is a very big responsibility, and most outreach professionals may not appreciate that responsibility. And I want each one of you to be conscious of that. And that also means that you need to become more aware of the workings of the institution, the nature of the program, the curriculum, the course structure, the kind of faculty who are involved in teaching them, the kind of opportunities that the course provides, the kind of information that is needed for students to experience such an education. In a way, there is a very important thin line between, you know, uh, creating, impressing a student about the choice he or she has to make on the one hand, and to aggressively, oversell your own institution. You, of course, have an objective of, recognizing that the school or the program that you are part of is what you would like that student to consider. But at the same time, you also have a larger responsibility towards that young person who is dependent upon in many ways, and will be making some of those informed choices on the basis of what you end up telling them. So you end up actually acting as some sort of a mentor to this student, and that makes that role very significant. Now, it's so difficult to define that type of a mentoring role. It is, sometimes definitions are not possible for something so inherently subjective in nature. But the recipients of that, including parents and the stakeholders who are out there, they know it. They know it when you are promoting an idea in an unfair, overselling manner, or you are doing something in the right earnest, in the best interest of the student. That thin line is what you need to cultivate and be on the right side of it, because it's not that one student who ends up applying to you, it's about your larger reputation that you want to build in that community.
Thank you. And I think the huge takeaway for me from this conversation right now is that outreach professionals have to stop looking at themselves as marketing or salespeople, and have to start looking at themselves as also counselors to a very large extent, and they play a huge role in the future choices that students are going to make. So I think, and also keeping ourselves updated and ensuring that we're not just going by the book and the pitch that we've been trained to go by, but making an effort really to know more about the institution beyond the confines of who we interact with on a regular basis, and also keeping up in general with larger trends in the industry globally. And I think that's one thing that I've seen very rarely, that outreach professionals in India, I don't think most of us know global best practices. We are not making an effort to read about what has been done with successful countries like the United States, or Australia or UK, and what did they do in the last decade, good, bad, and again, how can we learn or not from those practices as well. And of course, TOC hopefully will be able to facilitate that as well. Dr. Rajkumar, when we sent out the registration form for this session, we had asked, participants to share any questions that they have. We got so many, and they were so interesting. So we're going to now go straight to audience questions, and I'd like to call Afreen. Afreen is an assistant professor of law at BITS Pilani, and Afreen, please go ahead and ask your question. Is
Thank you so
Afreen here
much,
with us?
Bhakti.
Yeah,
Yes,
go ahead.
thank you so much, Bhakti, and thank you so much, Ankur. First of all, nice to see you, Professor Raj. It's always a pleasure. I think we also interact at so many different levels, and really nice to share the panel here today. I think my question basically deals with the fact that as a young professional who's starting their journey, right? I have also seen, OP Jindal grow in that level. What are those tips and tricks to keep in mind, especially when we are reaching out to school professionals, counselors, coaching centers, because we are starting new. We don't have a background as such to showcase. In my case, I would suggest that I am a purely academician who's been working in the field and now trying to sort of make a mark in the outreach field. So one question is related to things to keep in mind while starting off, and secondly, do you think there has been some change post pandemic, specifically in terms of the offline versus online outreach? So these are two questions I would want you to address. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much, Afreen, and such a pleasure to see you. Congratulations, and I'm so happy to see your own journey and evolution from where you started and where you are today. So, Afreen, first of all, I'm very happy that you are part of the session, because you are an example of the kind of transitions that one might go through in one's career, from being a staff person who work on administrative responsibilities to an academic, and then to do both of them together. So all of this means that you are reflecting the kind of trends that will become more and more common in the future, especially in the private education sector. Uh, Listen, when you are new, you have an idea. It's very, very important, again, as I said, to be committed to that idea and to pursue that idea with kind of relentlessness. I mean, honestly speaking, India is a vast country, and it has a very strong, opinionated student community and parents community who make choices. One of the things that uh, uh, I was reluctant, but I still wrote yesterday in the article that Ankur mentioned, is that our education system is like a huge caste system. It's a reflection of the kind of prejudices and biases that society has. At the pyramid of the caste system is the IITs and the IIMs, and then the central universities. Then there are state public universities, and then NITs and ISERs and all of them. And then we are all way down in the pecking order. I mean, if you are a private university, you are already a suspect. You are out there, and so both from a parent standpoint and from a student standpoint, there is already so much of skepticism and arguably even negative impressions surrounding the status of you as an institution. So, in that milieu in which you are operating, for you to be able to, drive home the vision for your institution, the most important thing you can do is to have your conscience and to act with honesty and integrity. When you do that, there are three things that will happen. First, you would be convinced about what you are engaging with. Second, the person whom you are talking to is more likely to believe a more modest sense of what you as an institution and you as an individual are claiming than a kind of elevated, unreal, fantasy oriented idea of what you are essentially promoting. And the third thing that happens is that something that we also realize is that people talk to each other. So this is a kind of a word of mouth type reputation is so important because ultimately we are human beings are social creatures. They talk to one another. When you talk about your institution with passion and integrity and you are able to articulate the vision, you may be talking to people who themselves may not be interested for whatever reasons, but they end up talking to the other. And if you have in that process inspired them, there is a greater degree of them talking to other people who in turn will be possibly interested in you. So in some ways, you need to believe in that idea, in the cause that you're pursuing. For all the members of the outreach community, all I can say is that sometimes you are put in a predicament that you are asked to promote an idea or a cause that you don't believe in. I would strongly suggest that you should do everything within your means to get out of the situation at the earliest. For various financial reasons, one may have to pursue such tasks for a while, but it ultimately would not do good for you and indeed for that institution if you end up being part of those institutions where its philosophy, its approach towards institution building is not aligned to your own philosophy, values, ethics, or whatever. So that's something which I want to share with all of you.
Thank you, Professor.
Thank you so much, Dr. Rajkumar, for sharing your insights. I see a lot of hands are up. We'll try to take maximum questions as we can, but sir is here only till 5:30, so we have to be conscious of the time. But there are some pre-selected questions that we will be taking first. Let me call on my next colleague, Momita Sanan, Director Global Programs, Ajinkya D.Y. Patil University. Momita, if you are here, can you please ask your question?
Yes. Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much, Professor, for joining us. It's been an absolute pleasure hearing you talk about outreach and at least acknowledging the efforts that my colleagues here have been putting in for so many years. I've come from a traditional schooling system, college system, Delhi University as well, just like you. So I understand that earlier this particular community was just not operational. We were not there. And we sometimes straddle somewhere in between marketing and sales as well as counseling. We're somewhere in between. So my question to you is, and because I faced this in my last experiences, what do you think is a better strategy in terms of school outreach, especially for undergrad programs? Should we focus on, building relationships, building the
Okay.
classes, say 8th, 9th grade, or should
Monica, we
we?
lost you there for a second. We lost you there for a second. Just repeat the question.
Okay, so sorry about the network issues.
No
Um,
problem. I heard about the fact that you asked about what should be the strategy in
yes, sir.
school, and then what was the last line?
So strategy in school, option one should be focus on building relationships with students from a younger age, say build associations from 8th, 9th grades onwards, which leads to further, a deep relationship when the student is actually selecting the undergrad program, or should we just look at the current year numbers and go for 11th and 12th? What do you think is a better of strategy?
Thank you so much, Momita. It's such a pleasure to see you. Listen, it's just it's both in a way because it also depends upon the particular situation you are in. There is no one size fits all situation. If you have a larger outreach team, then I believe there should be people who are engaging with different type of schools and are talking to people both from the 7th, 8th, and 9th standard towards, and helping them make those choices, because ultimately several of them are going to make choices about which group they end up studying in the 11th and 12th. So talking to them actually might make sense. If you have a smaller outreach team and have lesser resources, then you are more conscious of what's going to happen in the current academic year. And so you end up obviously talking to the graduating students and focus a lot more of your resources on the 11th and 12th standard students. But either ways, I will say this, that you also mentioned about how to connect with. I think the best part of this is that not to look at schools from a kind of instrumental standpoint of they providing students to your institution. I think it's important for you to be genuinely interested in the future of young minds. I mean, I think this is connected to it's connected to what we all do as being in education. I mean, all of us, I believe, can be doing so many other things in life, but we have chosen to be in education because there is some part of us which has sufficiently motivated us to do, to pursue this calling in life. It is beyond our ability to do it well. It's about our own natural sense of interest, a deeper calling that we are pursuing. I was recently watching this fascinating movie, which I'm sure several of you watched. It's an old movie called Good Will Hunting. If you watch that movie, Good Will Hunting, the whole idea was, I mean, he was a mathematical genius. He was able to solve, math problems. Matt Damon plays that role, which, as a janitor, he would solve these problems which MIT professors would struggle. And one of his professors wanted him to become a field medalist or whatever. But ultimately, Matt Damon decided to pursue his own uh, calling in life. And for him, at that time, his calling was to pursue a dream girl who he fell in love with. But now it could be very, very many things. He was good at mathematics, but that doesn't mean he had to do that. So, for all of you who are doing what you're doing, ask a very important question. Is this something that you're so passionate about? Because if you are in the kind of work that we are doing, you need to be constantly be in a position to share your idea and your vision and inspire people and galvanize that consciousness tirelessly. And every person whom you talk to, that 7th or the 8th school you are going to go on that one day, that those students are meeting you for the first time. They expect the same degree of excitement and enthusiasm that you started off in the day. So I think it's absolutely critical that outreach professionals need to feel that they have a responsibility towards the study and career choices that the young people make. And that becomes the foundation for your interaction with the school counselors, the teachers, the principals, and then the parents and the students and all of that.
Thank you so
Thank you.
much, Professor. That was very insightful. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam.
Thank you, Dr. Raj Kumar. I think you're just setting new benchmarks for targets of 8 schools a day. No worries, no problem. All right. So I'm going to now call upon Sudarshan from VIT University. Sudarshan, if you're here with us, please go ahead and ask your question.
Good evening, everybody, and good evening, Dr. Raj Kumar. I think TOC is having a Seva Rescue start. That's all I can say, because it's a dream start for the legends to have you here. My question is, I mean, we at VIT, we are very, very new to outreach. We haven't, done outreach all along, but then we've just started this year. So one of the difference between the landscape of North Indian universities and South Indian universities, that is something which I thought I should ask you, because primarily North Indian universities look outreach from a perspective of marketing. Whereas if you look at most of the South Indian universities, it's still the professors who are the face of the institutes. There is this divide between academics and marketing. Now, how do we effectively use professors to get into outreach and then maximize it? Because what we find is the connect that some professors, I'm not generalizing, but some professors, the connect that they have with grade 10 students and grade 11 students or grade 12 students is quite widened in nature. Now, how do we bridge this gap?
Yeah, it's a great question, Darshan. Well, listen, talking about North and South India, listen, I mean, I strongly believe that you'll be very surprised at how similar these both North and South are when it comes to outreach efforts. Now, of course, VIT founder is a very I've known him very well, and in fact he's a Loyola alumni, and he was heading our alumni association. Uh, I think the real issue is not so much about North and South; it's about disciplines that you are promoting as well. You see, if you are, let's say, running an engineering college and have and STEM disciplines like VIT, for example, or even BITS Pilani or Manipal to some extent, where there are other disciplines, but STEM dominates in a way, you don't need to do a lot of outreach as others have to. I mean, you are actually in a very good situation because we are a three idiots country, right? I mean, most of us, most Indian kids want to study, become an engineer to figure out what they want to do in life. So you don't have the kind of challenges that pure arts, humanities, social sciences, even law, and those disciplines have, because they are already in an extremely difficult terrain to not just persuade people to study in that university. Most of the time, they are persuading people to not become an engineer or a doctor.
Yeah.
And that's a bigger effort altogether. And I do that all the time. I mean, that's what I do. Most of the time, I'm in Chennai and Bengaluru and Coimbatore and other parts of South India and say, you know what? Listen, you know, don't become an engineer. There are other things to do in life. So the point I want to make is that the approach towards outreach depends about on the discipline that you are conscious of promoting. And the second thing, you also said that there is a second element to it, which is the older private institutions which have developed a history and a kind of a larger presence in the mindset of people are very differently situated than the ones which are today newer. I mean, VIT is relatively older. Of course, Manipal and Bits Pilani are much older. Now they have caught in their imagination or the public imagination so much. I mean, I remember in the early stages when I would go and talk about Jindal University, then I've had questions like, oh, they produce steel, but when did they start a university? So, and then we had to tell, yeah, they do produce steel as well, but we want to build the steel frame of India, as Sardar Patel said. So we have to make, in a way, the the kind of effort to promote the idea requires a deeper belief in the vision of the institution. And you are and also, I think India has also changed a lot. Today, there was a point of time, and VIT is a very good example. When VIT was started, the larger imagination of its students would have been maybe from Tamil Nadu or nearby states, even a college like Loyola. Most of my classmates were basically from Tamil Nadu. The furthest was maybe Karnataka or Andhra Pradesh. But today, if you look at universities, students come from across India and from around the world as well. Our own university has students from all states and unions of India and from 40 countries in the world. So, in a way, the outreach dimension is also changed, and students are prepared to travel far, far away distances to pursue good quality education. And they are also ready to overcome pre-existing biases and prejudices about places and people. I mean, I remember when we went to Mumbai, in 2009 and 10, Mumbai schools were so snooty that they would say, "Oh, our students don't either they study in Mumbai or they go to Boston," and they are very dim opinion about Delhi, and even further dimmer opinion about Haryana. So, but then today, one of our largest constituency of students are actually coming from Mumbai. So, it's essentially India has changed a lot. There is a aspiration, there is a hunger for young people and parents to be able to let their kids go wherever they believe good quality education is available, and that is the challenge and the opportunity that the outreach professionals have.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sudarshan. And it's really good to see VIT and representation from VIT. It's a sign of changing times. So we're so happy to have.
Bhakti, VIT is in a good situation. They don't need to do any outreach. They just have to stop the gates. Too many people are wanting to come in and become engineers.
They're living our dream, which is just focus on thought leadership. That's it. Just focus on thought leadership. You don't need to do anything else. No
No, but
numbers. But
VIT is a fantastic institution, and I've seen its growth and evolution. And Shekhar is a very dear friend, and so many people there. So I'm so happy that they are part of this.
absolutely. And kudos to VIT for having such a progressive mindset, because you can also look at it the other way that, there are institutions that can rest on their laurels and glory of, for the courses that they provide, or the legacy that they have. But an institution like VIT is really inspirational, because they are saying that, yes, we know what we are and we've been around and we are good and we offer engineering, but we still feel the need to connect with schools and students. And I think that's great, because you can change the narrative when it comes to engineering colleges and how they do outreach, because you can add so much value to the whole conversation, and opening up minds beyond engineering, because the best fit conversation, I think, when it comes from the horse's mouth, which is engineering colleges, would be taken much more seriously by students and families than if it came from liberal arts institutions or other institutions who they think anyway we're trying to dissuade them from engineering. So thank you for joining us. And when we speak about the need to do outreach or the need to not do outreach, the next question is very interesting, because I think most of us have had that moment uh, every quarter when we are standing, or at the end of every admission round when we're standing in our management office and having those board meetings and saying, okay, what are the numbers, right? So there is a huge dilemma with a lot of managements where they're struggling to figure out the metric of measurement of ROI of an outreach team, because it's not just so simple as CPL, cost per lead, or cost per application anymore, because we are investing so much in brand building and other activities and relationship building. So Ankit, who's the head of marketing at Amity Group of Institutions, he had to leave, but I am asking the question on his behalf. And his question is that, basically, how do you measure the outcome of an outreach team?
Yeah. Well, it's a great question. And Bhakti, I think, you see, I've always believed that universities are very differently situated than other organizations in the larger context of any society. If you, a few years ago, I wrote an article in the Indian Express called "A University is Not a Corporation." And the theme of that article is that what we do in a university most of the time cannot measured and in monetary terms, and because the benefit that a university can render to a society simply cannot be measured, and it transcends both time and space. So in that context, it will be a mistake to measure the outcome of an outreach effort purely on the basis of numbers. Having said that, I think we need to differentiate the efforts that different departments of the university is doing towards getting the brand of the university built, as opposed to the admissions and outreach office, who has the much more, let's say, focused approach towards, uh, you know, engaging with potential students and parents, and to be able to attract some of the best minds to apply and to be part of it. Now, here, I think here is where the challenge is. All over the world, quite unfortunately, the only metrics to measure quality so far has been the exclusivity and the rejection of students vis-a-vis application numbers. So the more and more students you reject, the more you are expected to become an exclusive slash reputed slash leading institution. And I've been very concerned about that methodology, that approach, although it's almost inevitable as institution becomes more and more prominent, more and more people end up applying, and all institutions have limitations, and hence you have limited number of seats, and you end up saying no to more people. Because of this kind of conundrum that we face in the wider world, and not all institutions can kind of and can or even want to expand like some others. I mean, Amity is a good example, right? Amity travels across the country and around the world and have built campuses around, and some other institutions may not want to do that. They have, both conscious limitations and unconscious limitations, which make their overall number what it is. So either ways, I think it should align with the overall vision of the institution. If your goal is to be a provider of large scale education to a larger number of people, then your outreach strategy should match with that. Your branding strategy should match with that. If you are more and more inclined towards selectivity and having single campus type institutions, then your strategy and approach towards outreach will obviously be different. You are constantly balancing quality on the one hand and exclusivity on the other, and also access, which I think becomes very important nowadays because you have, I mean, all of us have scholarship programs, but we also know that there are limits to those scholarship programs. So in some ways, when you are pursuing the outreach effort, you need to become so conscious of the kind of institution that you are part of. That will determine your strategy towards your branding. That will determine your strategy towards engaging with the type of students and parents you want to. That will determine the strategy towards to what extent numbers become important, or for that matter, quality, for example. I am perfectly comfortable to accept that the first, say, 10 years of a university is a very difficult phase, whereby, emphasis on quality is not going to be the same as it is going to be as they grow. And we have enough stories to tell across India and around the world where the first decade is a challenging decade. And then as an institution progresses, it becomes even more conscious of these aspects and values. And that's exactly what the outreach community need to be mindful of. And that any disconnect between this evolution on the part of the institution and on the one hand, and the outreach people's own strategy towards reaching out to the community will mean that they will paying disservice to the institution.
Ankur, before you ask the next question, just very quickly, there was a very pertinent point that you made, Dr. Raj Kumar, which is that universities are not corporations, but we are now seeing that universities are being set up and run as corporations because you have investors, you have boards, you have therefore conversations of fiduciary responsibilities towards those investors. And so I think that kind of dictates mandates to a very large extent for universities and how they're recruiting. But I think that's a conversation on its own entirely, and we can probably do like a Vice Chancellor roundtable for this, because it's very important to understand, are you running a university as an education institution, or is this a corporation for you at the end of the day? Like, while on paper you might be a trust, but at the end of the day, you're running as a corporation. But yeah, Ankur, over to you.
Thank you, Bhakti. May I now call upon my colleague Ajay Taide, from Head of Career Counseling as Indus International School, Pune. Ajay, if you're here, you can go ahead and ask your question. Ajay, are you around?
I've just sent an article that I had written in Indian Express a few years ago on why a university is not a corporation. So for Bhakti, for those who are interested, they can look up the chat box.
Perfect. Thank you, sir. I think Ajay is not here, but he had a very good question from a career counseling perspective. He has asked, with so many new universities being established recently, with very few of them having genuine faculty, how do we assure that our students are not affected? What are reassurances can we provide to our students in times of complexity and uncertainty?
Yeah, well, it's a very major challenge. Listen, it's like this, okay? Uh, the gross enrollment ratio of India is approximately 22%. And our aspiration is to cross 50% in the next decade. The reason I mentioned the GR is that a lot of young people across the country are wanting to get good education. But the interesting aspect of this gross enrollment ratio is that it is extremely lopsided across different states of India. A state like Tamil Nadu, for example, has a 52% gross enrollment ratio, while the national gross enrollment ratio is only 22%. Tamil Nadu has the country's highest gross enrollment ratio. That means there are more and more institutions where students are able to study. So, in a way, to answer your question, I think there is a need for more higher education institutions that can cater to the needs and aspirations of young people. However, there is an equally important need to ensure that these institutions are conscious of quality and are committed to promoting excellence. Now, this, I believe, unfortunately, the outreach community may not be able to do much about it because this is connected to the very founding and the benefactor's vision and their own interest in pursuing it. Having said that, increasingly, the market is responding. More and more students and parents are conscious of quality. They are doing their research. They are prepared to not even pursue education in old public reputed institutions, and are preferring select private new institutions as they believe that their own objective to pursue an education that truly promotes excellence is better fulfilled in these institutions. So that change is already happening. History and pedigree are not only the criteria for determining, making choices as to where they want to study. So in some ways, uh, outreach professionals will also have a choice to align themselves to those institutions which are better aligned with their own commitment towards being part of an idea, because ultimately you are promoting an idea, a vision. The point about standards is becoming a very serious matter, but there is silver lining there, because that silver lining is shaped by the choices students are making and the overall internationally evolved competitive environment in education too. There was a point of time, maybe 10, 15 years ago or 20 years ago, the Indian imagination for international education was limited to United States and UK and maybe parts of Europe. Now you have at least 20 other countries, including Singapore, Hong Kong, South Korea, Taipei, Japan, North America, Western Europe, and of course, Australia, New Zealand, which are attracting Indian students. As if that was not enough, we have several thousand Indian students going to Ukraine to study medicine. And then you have students in Kazakhstan and Uzbekistan and Kyrgyzstan who probably are also studying medicine. And of course, the elephant in the room, a large number of Indian students studying medicine in China as well. So in some ways, there is enough scope for a significant expansion in the higher education sector in India, so long as that expansion is conscious of quality and excellence. If it does not, is mindful of that, the students have choices both in India and abroad.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you so much for that insightful answer. I am just conscious of the time. There are a lot of hands that are up. I'll request all the people who are asking questions to be brief so that we can have the maximum benefit of them.
I see our old friend Himanshu there. So maybe
Yeah.
Himanshu can answer the question.
Yeah. Himanshu, go ahead. You can ask your question.
Hi, Dr. Raj. Glad to
Hi,
see
Himanshu.
hear you all the time. I won't take much time, but I really appreciate when you said, and I can share a lot of stories here, but then I would want to share one thing and ask you that you asked about you told us about the collective purpose, so I put it two ways. One, that this is not my job, that kind of feeling when we get that this is not my job, and of course you are an example of telling us when you can even tell us, like quickly I'll say that in India we have large numbers and we have to carry huge number of brochures when we visit schools, right? And I'm a witness of, so our team was there, the general team was there, four of the team were traveling, and then I think four people were part of the outreach team, and then we had two cars and we had no place for the brochures. So the options were either to dump the brochures or to dump a couple of people from the team, right? And you were the one who took 5 minutes and created space for three, right? So what my question here is, where do we say? So I'm not asking where do we say it's not my job. On the other side, there are people like, I take that privilege of telling you that you say it's my job. A lot of times, Dr. Raj will take a lot on him. A lot of times, Bhakti will take a lot of him. A lot of time, somebody else will take a lot of them. So the balance of both sides. One, it's not my job. How do we balance that? On the other side, there are people like us who want to do a lot of stuff. Like I created a record of 33 meetings in 3 days. So how do I balance myself also? It's a selfish question for myself and for the entire team. Balance of both. One, it's not my job. Second, it's my job. How do we balance both?
So, Ankit, sorry, Himanshu, what I would say is the following. Uh, you see, I mean, there are two things here. One is that if you have a team, there are going to be some degree of diversity in the team, and there will be people who are going to be doing more than others. My own approach to all of that is that at an organization level, you can set up minimal standards of efficiency and professionalism and even deliverables and things like that. And HR people are very good at doing that. But there is something beyond that minimum standards, which is only done by example setting. It's people watch other people do what they are doing, especially when you are holding positions of power and responsibility, and they are far more persuaded by those type of behavior, and then are adapting themselves to that type of behavior. So talking about brochures, I mean, on a lighter note, I should say this, that when we travel around the country and the world, we always carry a lot of brochures, and even now I carry them. And then I realized that I've gone through the cycle. So I would have these brochures in my check-in luggage, and then I meet people in the plane. Then I said, you know what? Okay, now I need to carry some as hand luggage. So and those hand luggage brochures are smaller than the larger brochures. So we print it in the shorter brochures and carry it hand luggage. And then I realized sometimes, even after exhausting hand luggage, you are walking into a restaurant or you're not prepared to have an outreach meeting, you meet somebody. So now I've made tiny brochures, which can be pocket-sized brochures, and you never know who you meet up. Maybe you meet somebody in the loo or something. So you should have a brochure handy to give it away. So the point is, it becomes part of your, life, and to be able to engage with people because you believe in that idea. Now, of course, there will be people who may not be in that league, and I don't expect everybody to be in that situation. So there are some of us who are, who pursue this as a calling in life, and there are some others who may be doing it as a job.
Thank you so much, sir. Uh,
Thank you, sir.
I loved his small brochures.
It's a real small one. It's pocket size.
Really,
Like,
yeah.
Yeah.
we all grapple with
It's
this, right? I think we
it's
come up with
it's
new
it's it's like
sizes
the
and
it's like the toilet version of the elevator image.
It's like amazing, man. May I quickly, I just want to give opportunity to maximum people to ask questions to Professor Raj. He's such a wonderful person. Mr. Bharat, if you would like to ask your question, please.
Yes. Good evening, Dr. Raj. This is Bharat Bhardwaj, and I have no experience of outreaching. I'm very new to this community, just 3 months old, and by accident or incident, I have been pulled in because I went to a counselor for my son's counseling. So, but I have experience of my education from IIT and did my MBA from FMS, worked for various countries, and it's an interesting field, definitely. I read your article regarding becoming Vishwaguru, India can become Vishwaguru when, and it comes to my mind Naranda and Takshira of those times. So there are two factors which I believe. One is because the current private, although the education should be the responsibility of the state, but unfortunately it is a ratio challenge there. We have more number of people than the facilities available today. But when it comes to the private universities, you find a lot of politicians or the capitalists pumping their money and they're making it. Although you said it's not supposed to be profitable or kind of corporate, but this is happening. So when we see this, Takshila and Nalanda was built on values because talent was attracted there and education was free. I have seen very less kind of universities like Kasturba Medical College was built on those values, and still there they provide 100% scholarship to the first 1,000 if you have ranked 1,000 in NEET. It's 100% free education. So that's the reason you attract talent, and even most of the world universities which are built on this formula, they have done exceedingly well. Second point is how do you put a standard to education? Like for healthcare, we have continuous medical education program, and do we have responsibilities to put that ethics in the education as well? That all our educators are, they should continuously update themselves, and there should be some kind of check and credits on that. So these are
Great.
my 2 points. Yeah.
Well, thank you, Mr. Bharat. Listen, why don't we take a few more questions and then I'll
Yeah,
answer all
yeah,
of them
yeah,
together.
yeah, yeah. Charu, you can
I
go
think
next.
Charu and then Harshita both ask
Yeah,
your questions and
yeah.
then Raj Kumar.
So, hello, Dr. Raj. I think I'm very privileged because I'm meeting you 2 months in a row together, and this is really, really an honor. And so, thank you for that Bangalore visit, and it has really left an indelible mark, at least on me. And so, my question is, I had shared last time also that we have been doing a lot of outreach last year and the year before that, of course, online. And the stalwarts who are sitting here, I'm sure, were also enjoying that phase of not carrying brochures around and just jumping from one Zoom room to another. Also, what do you feel is the future of outreach? Is it going to arrive at a hybrid model, or is virtual still going to rule the roost? Or any thoughts on this whole virtual outreach, essentially? If
Perfect.
Got you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Perfect.
Harshita, your question.
Hello, am I audible?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yes, Sajita. Sure.
Okay, yeah. Thank you so much, firstly, for this opportunity. It has been very enriching to listen to Sir and to all of you. I'm also an academician and I'm trying to also understand this discipline a little better. And one of my questions is that it's a very basic question. How does one approach outreach in terms of different institutions? Like, if we are going to school, if we are going to another college, if we are going to a tuition center, if we are going to say a parents meet, how does the outreach differ? Because it is not the same audience that we are referring to. The another question that I have is, at what stage in a university, like when one applies also for an outreach program, at what stage of a university does a university actually need people in outreach? when do we start doing it, or when do we expect that, okay, after doing this, like, it's not a monetary decision that sir has been saying time and again, but then how do we make sure that, okay, the rate of return or the benefit is going to be, we're going to get the benefit. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Harshita and Charu and Bharat. So, Harshita, your question is so interesting because you are absolutely right that the target audience makes a huge difference. I go into a coaching center, and mostly these coaching centers are dilapidated places. You have to climb up several floors carrying all these brochures, and the students are so not interested because you are like an interloper. The coaching center has allowed you to, come in a break. I don't know what they sold it to them that we were let in, and then we were like this kind of, somehow trying to intervene their class. So at that time, you end up having 10, 15 minutes, and you can't talk about the philosophy of education and the future and all of that. You need to be very targeted about information sharing. And most of the time, you are sharing a very limited idea, a limited perspective, share some information, and allow, if you have 15 minutes, allow at least 5 minutes for a short Q&A session. But for that Q&A session to become effective, the 10 minutes that you have should provide information that will sufficiently fire their imagination and develop a slight sense of intellectual curiosity to ask those questions. And I think that's so important. In terms of the moment you are in relation with parents and others, you need to talk more in terms of the larger purpose of education and how that can shape the future of young minds. Parents have a very different opinion about what their children want to study, and you are also going to be balancing that. And you need to nudge the parents also to tell them that they have a larger responsibility to understand and appreciate what are the desires, the aspirations, the dreams, the perspectives of their own children, and how they ought to be supporting in their vision, because you don't want unhappy students who end up studying courses that they are not interested. They will definitely not be successful professionals as well. And so in some ways, the audience matters. Moving towards Charu's question, good to see you, Charu. Charu, the online versus virtual, listen, we are all, this is fun. I'm able to talk to all of you, but working professionals, slightly people who are experienced in life, it's okay. But young people, high school students, this doesn't make sense at all. We will do it again if we have to do it. But I am very, very skeptical of, outreach sessions undertaken for high school students, young people in schools or other centers through either hybrid or, by the way, there is no hybrid in India. Okay, it's a bogus term. We don't have any hybrid thing. Mostly that hybrid, instruments never work. It's either, in fact, it's actually bad. It should be either physical 100% or virtual 100%. I have attended so many hybrid sessions, and they are basically very low bid sessions. Nothing happens out of it. Most of the time, the people who think they are in screen, they are not seen or heard. So we should focus on having physical sessions as far as possible. I do believe that there are challenges, but there is something to be said about, emotionally present in that room. And that makes a huge difference. So many of us, after the pandemic, when we did our physical outreach, I just did a 5-city tour. I was there one day in Delhi, Chennai, Bangalore, Hyderabad, and Mumbai. And each day we had 4 sessions. It was fascinating and met hundreds of people. There can be no substitute to it. So I'm a big votary of physical outreach. You have to do it, especially for students. This kind of sessions are great because several of you may not be able to travel to one place, and we are able to connect with each other. And I am so much connected to this community, so we can do it. But when it comes to students and to some extent even parents, it's important to do it physically. Bharat, listen, this, by the way, I should tell you, Bharat, since you are a recipient of public education, don't be in any illusion that this is all 100% freely given. All of us are paid for your education. I mean, there is no free education. The taxpayers of India have paid for all the free education that we have ever received. I mean, my alma mater, Delhi University, charges 5,000 rupees for an undergraduate program per annum. I mean, surely the cost of running the program is several times more. And the reason it's able to do it is that the Indian taxpayers are hugely subsidizing that education. Now, so that's a very important distinction that we need to drive home the point to the parents, to the students, that there is something fundamentally different from private and public higher education, in which the public higher education is funded by taxpayers, and that's how these public institutions are able to keep their fee structure to what they are, and private institutions are not getting any resources from the state and are actually self-financing themselves and still providing scholarships, fellowships, keeping the fee structure accessible, promoting inclusivity, advancing equity, and all of that. Speaking about the larger point here, and I have told this before, I am fundamentally opposed to the idea of anything called for-profit education. I do not believe that a higher education institution, and I'm speaking about higher education, should be and can be ever a for-profit if you want to maintain quality and excellence. For all the reasons that I've talked about in the article on why universities are not a corporation, we strongly need to nurture not-for-profit, truly philanthropic uh, private institutions which are contributing to public good. In that sense, education is part of an effort to promote public service. And that is why I do not believe that, higher education institutions, the university should be set up by, people who simply want to do it like a business. It has to be set up by people who are very rich and very much made their wealth through other means, or are making their wealth through other means, and are recognizing that true higher education opportunities can never make money. I would actually be worried about any university making money. If it is making money, then it is not doing a good job, because the nature of that activity is such that it only ends up being spent, and you simply cannot make money in higher education. For all those promoters who want to make money, I would rather prefer they should be doing so many things, including selling lassi or something like that, or open restaurants, as opposed to actually, building a university, because they can actually make better money in real estate and things like that. If you are in education, especially higher education, your fundamental goal ought to be to promote public service and contribute to the common good. And the future of India and the world will depend upon the kind of education that you're going to give to young people who will shape the future. I mean, young people of India, the 900 million people who are less than 35 years of age, are not only going to shape the future of India, but will be shaping the future of the world. And that is a bigger responsibility. I mean, you can run restaurants and hotels and make money, but don't do that by building universities.
Sir, I do
Thank
understand
you.
that the priority
Mr.
of the
Bhardwaj,
nation, like you said,
Mr.
tax money,
Bhardwaj,
of course.
Mr.
Bharatji,
Bhardwaj, we are not taking up any follow-up
yeah,
questions,
yeah. So
so
we can have a later
we'll leave
discussion.
that later time. But I know it's very tempting to have a conversation with Dr. Raj Kumar. So we've tried our best to get as many of you as
Sure.
possible in it, but we can't have follow-up conversations. But Dr. Raj Kumar,
Absolutely.
what a session! I mean, what a conversation! You have patiently answered all the questions, and if I have had a lot of epiphanies in this last 1.5 hours, and I just want you to have the last word, when if you can just say the one parting shot for outreach professionals and also for some of the schools that are attending. What is your one parting shot of advice?
Well,
Before
listen,
sir, I just want to
yeah.
add 5 seconds. Thank you so much. I mean, Bhakti, we couldn't answer all the questions. There are still 15 pending questions that people are messaging me. Ask my question, ask my question. I am not able to do that. I'm so sorry to all of my colleagues who I was not able to give you a chance to ask him a question. Maybe we will have another session in some time if he is scheduled permits. But thank you so much, sir, from the bottom of our hearts. As I knew always. I mean, you are the, as Bhakti rightly said, he is the original god of outreach, and having him OG. Having him here has been such a pleasure. Already we are receiving so many messages saying what a session, what a start to Legends of Outreach. So thank you so much, sir, for being here with us and patiently answering all the questions and sharing your story of building an institution like Jindal. Grateful, sir. Over to you.
Well, thank you, Ankur. And well, you talked about the original God. Well, we are all part of the Bhakti movement in that sense. So Bhakti herself is a leader in the higher education sector. So I'm so delighted to be in this conversation, both of you. Listen, I want to tell to all of you that we are going to be witnessing an amazing future in the private higher education space for a number of reasons. First of all, let's get the data right. As of today, 70% of Indian higher education sector institutions are private. 70%. And 70% of students are studying in private higher education institutions. So, despite all the talk about the public institutions, the reality is the private institutions are dominating both in terms of the number of students who are studying and the number of institutions which are making a difference. Second, the public institutions are facing huge crises which are witnessing and coming to the forefront on a daily basis. And that crisis is one of resources, governance, and even arguably poor interventions and poor leadership at various levels of governance. And the equally unfortunate aspect is that little or no accountability for these public institutions when it comes to how they are functioning and their overall, many of them, I'm not saying all, but many of them, their indifference to the needs and aspirations of students is the root cause of several of the problems that we're facing in the higher education sector. And that's something which you should be mindful of. And the third is that the Indian student and the Indian parent is increasingly mindful of the kind of opportunities that they want to give to their students, their children. Students are mindful of wanting to achieve their fullest potential, and they are ready to, go deep into the institutional vision and its activities, initiatives. I mean, think about it. When I went to college, most of the time we didn't care much about what is the curriculum and the course structure. Do I have interdisciplinary electives? What kind of opportunities that today if you talk to high school students, I do sessions across the country, and if I want to speak to them for an hour, it goes to 2 hours, because they're asking questions about, in the third year, can I take this elective? Or if I take this elective, how many credits will I get? Or if I do this internship? Imagine high school student talking about what is going to happen after the next 5, 10, 15 years. So there's an enormous expectations that unfortunately cannot be met by a typical public institution, and that's where private institutions make a very big role. And the fourth bit is that the private university space is also changing. Gone are the days when you can end up creating sort of mediocre, for-profit, private, dubious, fly-by-night operators and end up offering degree programs, and because you didn't have anything better to do, or you are making a quick buck. Today, more and more students are wanting to be part of good institutions in the private sector, and that means you need to be discriminating about where you want to be part of when it comes to doing outreach. And the fifth, I think, is something which you should become conscious of, is that how do you upgrade yourself? What kind of educational journeys that you will have to pursue, because you need to upskill yourself as well. There's a very nice phrase which says that what got you here can't get you there. And so you have done very well to do where you are, but if you were to get to the next level, you need to be ready and willing to pursue graduate education, master's degree programs, specialize yourself in different aspects of education, to what kind of how pedagogy influences teaching, why research is important in a university, what kind of collaborations work and don't, and why mental health is a challenge in education institutions, and what should be universities and schools doing. Those are the type of issues that you need to become conscious of as you become part of the outreach community. So I want to end by saying that the higher education sector in India is going to grow leaps and bounds. If our aspiration is to build a $5 trillion economy, we will be investing more and more on education. All kinds of diversified set of institutions, including public and private, will be playing that role. but I do expect that the private sector is going to dominate that sector more and even more than now what it is. And we may be waiting to see how the international universities are also, to what extent they will play a role in the larger imagination of India's higher education future. So, अच्छे दिन आगे हैं. So you will see very good times ahead when it comes to the education sector, and congratulations to each one of you for being part of it.
Thank you, Dr. Rajkumar, for an absolutely mesmerizing 1.5 hours. I think we're only 10 minutes overtime, which is not too bad usually for sessions like these, especially in India. I think we tried our best to keep it short, but you were phenomenal, needless to say. And I think just word to everyone who's attending this and who's been a part of the outreach collective in the last month or so. Our attempt is to bring you learning opportunities, opportunities to get inspired by people like Dr. Rajkumar, and to learn. Because at the end of the day, if we don't keep learning, and this is something we keep preaching to students, but we are not learning at all. So if we don't keep learning, we're not going to grow, and we have to walk the talk. So let's get our act together and let's equip ourselves so that we're able to lead students better and work more collaboratively and innovatively, not just with each other, but also schools and service providers. And thank you all for joining us today. We've got a lot of messages about this session, so we're going to sit now responding to everyone. And thank you all for joining. A big thank you once again, Dr. Rajkumar.
Thank you, Bhakti and Ankur. And I want to close by extending a personal invitation to you and to your entire community. I want to say that at your convenience, I would like to host all of you physically on our campus. We'll take care of everything. You don't need to, you just land up in Delhi, and we will welcome all of you to our campus, spend a few days there, and we'll host all of you, because I think we need to be doing this together. I mean, can you believe that, Harvard, Yale, Stanford, Princeton, and Columbia, and many other universities in the US in particular, they end up coming to India, and they do, on many occasions, joint outreach. I mean, think about it. They go to a school, and they will have Harvard and Yale and Stanford and Columbia and Princeton people together talking to those students. I mean, that reflects the level of maturity and institutional confidence and evolution that they have acquired over the years, that the pettiness that ends up being associated with many of our institutions when it comes to these crass competition that we end up talking about is something that we need to overcome. And the way to overcome is to come together as a community, and we'll be most happy to host Ankur. We are very delighted that Ankur is now in his new avatar as a doctoral student at Jindal, and I'm very delighted to host all of you. So, Bhakti, see you in Sonipat.
See you in Sonipat, Dr. Rajkumar, hopefully with the whole gang of the Outreach Collective. Thank you for this invitation. I think we're going to take you upon it in a few months. Thank you so much.
Wonderful. Take care. Best wishes to all of you.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.